Well, Holmes, Watson, this is a great pleasure for me to welcome you to the Villa Bartique here at Le Palais. I hope your stay on the island will be both comfortable and interesting. May you have a wonderful holiday, my friends.
Thank you, Andre.
Your very good health, and many thanks, Monsieur Lorient.
Oh, Andre, please, I'm only too proud that the Belle-Ile has...
Monsieur Hert, the yacht, the Grey Goose. The captain sent me. The owner, Henry Buckley, he is sitting at the desk in his cabin, and he is dead.
We present the stories of Sherlock Holmes.
The Grey Goose.
Sherlock Holmes and I were taking one of our very rare holidays abroad together. It was in the summer of 1883, and the weather was glorious. Holmes had just finished an international case in Geneva, in which he had managed to greatly help Andre Lorient, a French diplomat and businessman. Lorient showed his gratitude in practical terms, part of which was to press an invitation upon Holmes and me to visit his villa at Le Palais on the Belle-Ile. That comparatively little-known island in the Bay of Biscay was, in those days, quite unspoiled. And we were out to enjoy ourselves enormously, when, that lunchtime, a sailor from a British yacht lying at anchor out in the harbour came with an urgent request for help. As we were rowed from the shore, Andre Lorient explained.
The yacht ahead is the Grey Goose. She is owned by Henry Barclay. You may have heard of him. Quite a rich man, in similar business to myself. He married a French girl, Marcel. They sail these waters quite regularly, as the Barclays have a house in Nantes. The captain of the Grey Goose is French, Yves Sarnard. There is a crew of 3 with Marcel and a male secretary.
She's a fine-looking yacht. You know this man Barclay well?
Reasonably well. I'm surprised to hear that he has died so suddenly. Although many years older than his wife, he always appeared in excellent health. But perhaps the captain can tell us the nature of the illness. I'm very glad you are with us, Watson. We are rather isolated on the island and have no skilled medical help.
I shall be happy to be of service to Madame Barclay.
Well, here we are. The captain is waiting for us. Come.
Yeah, monsieur, I help you.
Come. After you, Holmes. Watson.
Thank you.
We climbed aboard the Grey Goose and found the captain waiting for us. After the necessary introductions, he showed us down a small companionway into the master cabin. It was furnished as a comfortable lounge, but also had the air of a businessman's office. Our attention was immediately focused upon the desk. Sprawled across it was the body of Henry Barclay. His face was contorted in a death agony. His hands extended as though to clutch the sides of the writing blotter.
Nothing has been disturbed, Monsieur Lorient. The moment I was told of this, I locked the cabin door and sent ashore for you. I knew that you had 2 Englishmen staying with you. This yacht is registered in Great Britain, therefore it is British property. It has to be reported to the correct authorities that its owner has died.
I understand. Mr. Sherlock Holmes is a very famous detective. There will be no difficulties. He will take charge from now on.
Good. Meanwhile, I understand the good doctor, he can make the examination?
Yes, of course, if you wish me to.
It must have been a heart attack. If you will please, doctor.
One moment before you touch the body, Watson. May I make a few observations? To start with, I see that Mr. Barclay appeared to be writing a letter. May I, gently now, Watson, let me slide the letter out from under the outstretched hands. Yes, it appears to be a business letter, addressed to the manager of Stewart Bank, London. It reads, Dear Mr. Mortimer, I've been going through my accounts and find from my passbook that I have 3 checks cashed for £500 each. I cannot recollect ever having drawn this money on those days. They are cash to bearer checks. Enclosed is the bank statement with the withdrawals concerned, marked with a cross. As I should be in Nantes for some months, I should be obliged if you would inquire through your clerks who cashed those checks. That's if it's possible to trace the person in question. I'm sure that there has been some... Oh, here the letter breaks off. That's interesting. So this is what he was writing when the so-called heart attack took place.
So it would appear.
I think I should like to ask a few questions from the crew and your secretary before reporting this officially, Captain. Can you tell me how you came to be here, the purpose of this trip?
It is what we do every year. We leave Southampton and cruise down to the Mediterranean. Always we call in at Nantes to stay for a while at the house. But sometimes, if the weather is particularly fine, as it is now, we take our time and call in at the Belle-Île. Our voyage here was uneventful. We anchored here early, having arrived outside the harbor at dawn. None of us has been ashore. At about 11 o'clock, Mr. Barclay came down here to his cabin, giving orders that he was not to be disturbed until lunchtime. At noon, his steward knocked at the door with a tray of drinks. He entered. Mr. Barclay was writing, and he left the tray and went out. At 1 o'clock, he returned to say that the lunch was ready, and he found a body, just as you see it.
No one else has been in or out?
Not to my knowledge.
Very well. Well, I suggest we leave my good friend Watson to conduct his examination without interruption, while I have a talk to the steward and the secretary. Will that be convenient?
Oui, of course.
Good, then, lead on. Excuse us, Watson. Will you join us in the saloon when you're finished?
Yes, very well. I shouldn't be longer than half an hour.
Right you are. Pray proceed, Captain.
They left the cabin, and I was able to apply myself to the task ahead. I'd seen many dead men in my time and treated many sufferers of heart complaints. One look at the dead man's face told me it was not as straightforward as the captain thought. But I was careful not to jump to conclusions. I checked and rechecked as Holmes was taken aft to question the cabin steward at some length. And then...
It is just as I told you, Monsieur Holmes. I prepare Monsieur Barclay's drinks tray as usual. I take it in, he looks at it, and he points to the table. I place it down and leave.
What was he doing at the time? Was he at the desk? Which table did you use?
Oh, he was writing at the desk. The table was the one under the starboard window. It is not a porthole, you understand. It opens out onto the deck.
Was the window or porthole open?
Oh, oui. With the weather like this and that anchor, natural.
Captain, Andre, I'm sorry to interrupt, but this is important. You must know. It wasn't heart failure that killed Mr. Barclay. He was poisoned.
What? Poison?
By what exact poison, I do not yet know, but I'm sure it was administered to him by means of a drink.
Poisoned? But who could have done such a thing?
I think that is what we are here to find out. Might I suggest we return to the cabin? I take it that you locked the door, Watson?
Yes, I have the key.
Very well, steward. We shall not require you again at the moment. Please see that no one goes ashore.
Very good, Captain.
Perhaps I might interview the secretary in there. Could that be arranged also, Captain?
We returned to the cabin, and as we reached it, a tall, slender figure came striding down the companionway. It was the secretary, and to my utmost surprise, I found I knew him. Well, David Dayton, surely James Dayton's son.
Good heavens, Dr. Watson. My father's old friend. Gracious me, what are you doing here, sir?
Well, Sherlock Holmes and I are staying with Monsieur Lorient on the island, and we were sent for in connection with Mr. Barclay's death. You his secretary?
Yes, that's right. I've been with him for a couple of years now. He found me useful because it's a British yacht and a French crew. Henry himself couldn't have been more English, but his wife is French. And as my mother was French, and I speak both languages equally well, I fit in rather well. Or rather, I did until this happened. What's in luck? Yeah, a heart attack is the last thing I thought would have happened.
It wasn't a heart attack, David. He was poisoned.
You can't mean that. Poisoned? No. Has anyone told Mrs. Barclay? No, we have only just found out ourselves.
I need confirmation. There should be a post-mortem, but I'm prepared to stake my reputation that it was poison.
The steward knows, and therefore I think it's fair to assume that the rest of the crew know. Might I suggest that you're the best person to break this news to Mrs. Barclay, Captain? Perhaps you'd be good enough to do so straight away. And would you care to come inside, Mr. Dayton? I should like to ask you a few questions.
Yes, of course.
I think you said that you've been in Barclay's employ for 2 years. You must know his affairs extremely well. Who has charge of all his private papers, money, things like that?
They're kept in that safe. It's hidden behind the picture on the wall over there. Look, I'll show you. Here. There, the safe has a special lock. I have a key, and there's one on his watch chain. It's a special lock. Difficult to open unless you know how. No one else knows how to open that but Henry and myself.
I see. And his bank statements, empty check stubs, that sort of thing?
They're all in the safe. I saw them there myself only a few days ago.
I see. Would you mind opening the safe for me, please?
Of course. Although I can't really see why.
I think it is most important.
Excuse me. You are Mr. Holmes and Dr. Watson? I am Marcel Barclay. I met the captain. He told me the news. Is it true? Henri was killed? It was not a natural death?
I'm afraid it is true, yes.
Then you must find the person who poisoned him. Find him quickly, so that he too may die. I do not care what steps you take, or how much money is involved, but you must find out who killed my husband. And when you do, I shall take my revenge.
Madame Barclay was very clearly a Frenchwoman. She was extremely beautiful, dark hair and blue eyes that looked straight at you quite fearlessly. She seemed more angry than distressed by the news of her husband's death. She informed Holmes that she'd be in her cabin if he needed to speak to her, and then, with a long, inscrutable look at the body of her dead husband, she turned on her heel and left us. Holmes, after making sure the safe was unlocked, asked us to leave him while he searched the cabin. I found myself alone with David Dayton.
I'm sorry we have to meet in these dreadful circumstances, Dr. Watson. I find it all quite bewildering.
You can throw no light upon it at all? I mean, it's clear that your late employer was poisoned between the hours of 12 and 1 o'clock.
You mean that's when he took the drink? The steward took in the tray at that time. He always did. But if the poison was in the gin or the tonic, surely an examination of the contents of the bottles will show this.
Sherlock Holmes will find that out. Have no fear. Of course, if the poison was simply sipped into a glass while he was unaware...
But no one visited the captain except the steward.
You sure?
I'm only sure of myself, of course. I was sunning myself up on deck. Mrs. Barclay was there for part of the time. Then she went to change for lunch. Doctor, this is terrible. I mean, why would anyone wish to see Henry dead?
I think Holmes will be asking you that question, David. After all, next to his wife, you must have known the man better than anyone else.
Yes. Yes, I suppose I did.
Well, I think that there's no need for a post-mortem to confirm your theories, Watson, or to tell us the type of poison that was used to kill Henry Barclay. Here, look at this.
Small phial. It's got a label with words scrawled across it. I can't read it very well.
It says Amacara. It's a South American poison used by the Brazilian Indians. It's quite rare, but very deadly. I found it hidden away at the back of the safe in his cabin. That's what killed him, all right.
But how? I mean, well, I don't understand.
2 or 3 drops of this in the bottom of the glass. The drinks tray was placed as usual on the table in front of the open window porthole that looked out onto the deck. Anyone who was passing outside could have reached in and tipped the poison into the glass.
I see. But then, who could have done it?
Well, anyone who passed along the deck. This file was hidden behind a book labelled Ship's Cash Account. Do you keep the cash account statement?
Yes, of course I do.
And no one but you and the dead man could get into the safe?
Well, that's right, but look here. Are you trying to say that it was me? That I poisoned Henry?
I'm not saying anything at the moment. I'm merely asking questions and gathering information. From that information, I shall sift the data, and then I shall be able to make statements. Tell me, are you aware of the contents of this letter?
Well, what is it?
Well, it must have been the last thing your employer ever wrote. It's to his bank back in England, querying certain cash checks. Also in the safe was this balance sheet from the bank, which has the items marked in red ink. 3 checks of £500 each. The letter says that Barclay doesn't remember authorizing those withdrawals or signing those checks.
Well, let me see that. But I withdrew these cash amounts.
You admit it?
Of course I do. I was asked to make them. Henry asked me to do so. I made the withdrawals and took the cash and gave it to him straight away.
What did he do with the money?
How do I know? He must have had a reason for wanting the cash. I suppose he spent it.
But if that is so, why write the letter? 3 lots of £500. And he can't recall cashing those amounts, so it doesn't make sense.
Look, none of this makes sense. The way things are looking at the moment, it all points to me, doesn't it? The file hidden away, the bank book, the missing money, and I cashed it. But I didn't do these things. You've got to believe me, Mr. Holmes. I didn't do it. What motive could I have had?
I don't know. One final question, Dayton. What are your feelings for Marcel Barclay? Are they strictly platonic or of a somewhat romantic nature?
They are strictly those of a servant and his employer's wife. There is nothing at all between us. And if you think that is a motive for me becoming mixed up in murder, then you're very mistaken. Now, please, may I go now?
David Dayton moved away. I stared at Holmes. I simply could not believe that the young man who was the son of my old friend James Dayton could be a murderer. Holmes gestured to me to follow him, and we both made our way up onto the deck. And there, leaning against the rail, we looked out across the water to the vastness of the Bay of Biscay. Holmes was silent. Eventually, I could bear it no longer. Holmes, this is impossible. Great heavens, I know Dayton's family. They're decent, civilized people, good citizens. There's never been the slightest scandal in their family. I simply can't believe that David is involved in all this.
Oh, he's involved, all right, Watson. That's clear enough.
But you don't think he killed Barclay, do you? I mean, why? What's the motive?
Well, it could be money. We know that £1,500 is suspected of being stolen.
Yes, but David explained all that. He said it was at Barclay's request. He hasn't got the money.
Well, there's no proof of that, Watson. When a man is arrested and stands trial, he has to produce facts.
Holmes, it sounds as though you've already made up your mind that he's guilty.
Oh, certainly not, Watson. Quite the reverse. I'm sure he is innocent.
What? Why? I mean, you've been talking of facts. The facts are all against him. You've made them all fit in.
On the contrary, Watson, there are a few simple facts that do not fit in at all. To start with, for the poison. It's a very rare Brazilian poison, not much known in Europe. Now, according to the log, this yacht last visited Brazilian waters 4 years ago, just after Barclay married Marcel. Dayton was not with them at the time. I don't see how that file could have come into his possession. And another fact is, of course, why was the file hidden in the safe behind the cash book? If Dayton had used the poison, surely he would have thrown the file overboard, broken it, destroyed the evidence.
Yes, well, that is, unless there was more poison in the file, if he wished to use it again.
You saw the file, it was empty. And of course there's the timing. The poison was put into the dead man's glass, and yet, after using it, someone put it back into the safe. But quite impossible. No, Watson. There's been an extremely complicated plot to kill Barclay and place the guilt on Dayton. And that bears investigation.
Holmes, I'm literally and figuratively all at sea. What's it all about? What happens now?
I have a short talk to Madame Barclay, and then we leave for the island. Don't worry, Watson. Your young friend will not hang for a crime he did not commit. Excuse me, I shall be but a few minutes.
There is very little else I can tell you, Monsieur Holmes. I cannot throw any light upon the matter that you have raised. I know no reason for my husband being killed. I know no one would wish to kill him or benefit from his death. I am sorry I cannot help you. Please, will you excuse me now? I am still very upset.
Of course, I understand. One final question. Your own relationship with David Dayton? You were friendly, that is all?
Like all Englishmen, you think that the French wives are always unfaithful to their husbands. The answer is there is no emotional involvement. David did at one time show some interest in me. I quietly told him that I was in love with my husband, and that was that. I even told Henri about it. We laughed together. That is all. There was no trouble, no intrigue.
Thank you, madame. That will be all.
Shortly after that, Holmes made arrangements to leave the Grey Goose. The body of Henry Barclay had been removed by dinghy to the island, and we were then rowed ashore. There followed a very busy and tedious afternoon and evening. It wasn't until after dusk that Holmes made a sudden announcement.
Watson, are you prepared to put an end to this case?
But, of course, Holmes. What do you intend doing?
Returning to the Grey Goose under cover of darkness. You have a boat. Will you row us over to the yacht straight away?
Yes, of course. Of course I will.
Come, then. We must be very secretive. No noise, not at any time. Dress with black clothing and wear your softest shoes. Quickly and quietly. That is our motto for this evening. Come.
André Lorient was just as bemused as I was, but we obeyed all instructions. And with muffled oars, André rowed us back across the stretch of water to the yacht. Climbing aboard was not easy, but we managed it without arousing the crew. And then...
Careful, Watson. This way, I think. There are lanterns glowing in the main cabin. Careful. The porthole window is open. Careful, listen.
Yes, you allow Holmes and the police to draw the obvious conclusions.
I will remain silent about what I know, unless you agree to stay with me, now that he is gone.
But you agreed. Our love affair is over. Finished.
No. Oh, don't you see, my darling? This is the most wonderful opportunity. Stay with me. We will marry. You will be the master of this yacht. I will share everything with you. We will be together for always.
No, master. This is all your doing, wasn't it? All yours.
What? No, of course not. You cannot think that. I would never have killed Henri.
Then I don't understand.
David, you were his secretary. You knew there were financial difficulties, but even you didn't know the extent of his failure and his disappointment. And, of course, he knew about us. That is why he did it.
He did it?
Of course. He knew he'd lost me. He couldn't go on without me and his security. He took his own life. The poison. He hid the file. Questioned the cash that he asked you to collect. Made it look like murder. And the murder you committed. Oh, yes.
But you can prove this?
Oh, yes. And I promise I will speak. But only if you promise to stay with me and marry me. Well, David, what do you say?
Don't say anything, Dayton. We have heard all we need to know. I think you will have to tell the truth without any conditions now. Don't you, madame?
And so, with Andre and myself as witnesses, Marcel Barclay broke down and told the whole story. David Dayton was completely cleared of all suspicions. The police from the mainland were called in, and the truth, but only the truth of the suicide, was explained to them. What happened to Marcel, and whether she would have gone through with it and allowed her lover to hang for her husband's death, is a matter of speculation. But, as Holmes said,
it is impossible to buy love and affection, Watson. Even more impossible to buy loyalty. And thank goodness it has ended as it has. If those two had stayed together, it would have ended in an even greater tragedy. How glad I am that such things do not enter into my life of detection. Well, let us forget the most unsavory case, Watson, and enjoy the rest of the holiday, shall we?
Listen again next Sunday to The Stories of Sherlock Holmes, with Graham Armitage as Holmes and Kerry Jordan as Dr. Watson.
I trust you're enjoying the morning papers, Watson?
Hmm? Oh, yes. Oh, would you like to have them, Holmes?
No, not yet. I'm busy on my correspondence. This is interesting. Listen. Dear Mr. Holmes, I'm most anxious to have your advice on a most important event. I was present at the White and Milton auction of coins yesterday and became involved in what might be a serious charge. May I call upon you tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock? I shall understand if I'm not granted an interview and hope for another appointment. Yours faithfully, Evelyn Summerhays.
Evelyn Summerhays. Name sounds vaguely familiar. Man or woman, Holmes?
And the name's popular with both sexes at the moment. The letter's typewritten, which could mean a woman. The signature is made with a firm flourish, which could be a man's. We shall just have to wait and see, shan't we? Pass the newspaper now, please, Watson.
We present The Stories of Sherlock Holmes.
The Auction of an Oxford Crown.
Enjoy the best of both worlds. Only 2 hours drive from Johannesburg and Pretoria and half an hour by air. The magnificent Sundown Ranch Hotel and Lion Park, just 10 kilometers from the Pilanesberg Game Reserve and Sun City Resort. It offers an exciting escape from the hustle and bustle of everyday life. Reasonable rates, excellent food, friendly service and comfortable air-conditioned rooms. It will ensure a memorable stay. Activities include tennis, squash, horse riding, the Lion Park, and much, much more. Call now to make your reservation on 014-573-1000. That's 014-573-1000, or visit their website at www.restinations.co.za/Sundown Ranch. The Sundown Ranch Hotel and Lion Park. Two worlds in one.
Flower Connection has just opened their flagship store in Linden, Johannesburg at 65 on 4th, situated in 4th Avenue. For fresh cut flowers, plants and florist accessories at wholesale prices, come to Flower Connection. Our Florist Academy is well known for its courses and flower arranging lessons. Give a unique gift this Mother's Day, a flower course. We supply all flowers and materials. Remember, instead of giving one bouquet, the flower course will be a gift for life. Call Jenny on 076 951 9449 or visit our website at www.flowerconnection.com.
I was very rarely seated at breakfast before Sherlock Holmes came down, but at that time, early in 1882, I'd not been living in lodgings at 221B Baker Street long enough to appreciate Sherlock Holmes' early morning habits. I had therefore helped myself to eggs, bacon, and coffee, and proceeded to read the newspaper. The one Holmes always opened the moment it was brought up by Mrs. Hudson. Holmes soon took it from me. He glanced at the headlines, dismissing all the political and business news, and quickly found a report that interested him.
Did you read this, Watson? A strange coincidence. Listen. Strange event of the Royal Oxford Crown. The well-known sales rooms of White and Milton were placed in confusion yesterday when all hope of bidding for the special coin, the Charles II Royal Oxford Crown, were abandoned. The coin, which has been on view for days, disappeared within hours of it coming under the hammer, and another comparatively worthless coin of a similar type was found in its place. The resulting investigation and search proved useless. The coin has disappeared, and the authorities are completely baffled.
But, Holmes, that letter you just opened, it must refer to this event. The auction rooms of White and Mills. This person who's coming to see you has been involved in some way.
Yes, it's most interesting. That could well be our early visitor. I think Mrs. Hudson will answer the bell, Watson. But perhaps you'd welcome her in while I clear some of the breakfast things onto the tray.
Very well, Holmes. I think we shall find that our caller is a young woman. Beautiful and in distress.
Not a romantic, Watson.
This way, madam. Thank you. You have an appointment, I
That's all right, Mrs. Hudson. Mr. Holmes is expecting the lady. Please, step this way.
Thank you.
I'm Dr. Watson. I share these rooms with Mr. Holmes. Please, come in.
Thank you. You are Mr. Sherlock Holmes. You got my letter? Ah, yes. I see it upon the table. Thank you for granting me this appointment. My name is Evelyn Summerhays, and I really am in great trouble. I hope I shall not take up too much of your time.
The missing coin, the Royal Oxford Crown? I've just been reading about it in the newspaper. Please do be seated, Miss Summerhays. May I offer you some coffee?
Thank you, no. I've had breakfast.
Well, now, tell me how you happen to be concerned in this strange affair.
Well, it's a long story. I will try to be brief. I came to London nearly a year ago from Cumberland. I knew very few people in the city. I managed to get suitable accommodation, but I found I needed to work. I'm not a very patient person. I could not make a success of the task as a governess or teaching children. On the other hand, I'm very well read and speak quite a few languages. I obtained a job working on a newspaper. Oh, yes, I know it's unusual to have women writing for the press, but one must move with the times. My articles and news reports are acceptable under the heading of Evelyn Summerhaze, because most readers think that I'm a man. I enjoy my job, Mr. Holmes.
I'm sure you're extremely good at it. And was it as a newspaper woman that you went to the auction rooms?
Yes. I'd heard about the Charles II coin being up for auction. It realized some £250 some years ago. There are only a dozen known to have been struck. It was to commemorate the Oxford Parliament when Charles II ruled without using the house at all. I thought it would make an interesting article. I didn't know much about coin auctions, but I went along. There were only about 8 people present. A handful of elderly gentlemen asking to see the coins, which were in trays taken from drawers. Each coin had its own separate box in the tray. I obtained a catalogue and looked up the Oxford Royal. It was lot number 28. I thought it was a good opportunity to view the coin in detail, and so I called for that particular tray. May I view lot 28, please?
Tray with 28. To the lady at the center of the table, please.
Thank you. So this is the famous Oxford Royal. Most interesting. Hardly seems any different from the others.
You think it looks like all the rest?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, you read my mind. It does look quite ordinary.
Compare it with others from this trade, for instance. You will find it is quite different. Regardless of the age of the coin, the metal itself shows a different color, and the weight is quite extraordinary. You see?
Yes, of course, you're right.
You are obviously not a collector. Others around this table have no need to even hold the coin to tell you these things.
No, I don't collect coins, although I have seen many coin collections. I haven't taken all that much interest until now. How long do you think it'll be before this lot is auctioned?
An hour, I should say. That is if they start straight away.
Please will the attendants collect all trays on display. Thank you.
Oh, I'm terribly sorry.
That's all right. Here, take the tray, attendant.
Very well, madam. We will commence with lot 1. If you consult your catalogues, you will note the history of these coins, which make up the Downsbury collection. They were originally...
I sat fascinated as the auction proceeded. Everyone round the arc of the maiden table seemed to know exactly what would happen. It moved very swiftly. The young man sitting next to me bid for a lot and made the purchase with hardly a glance at the coin when it was placed in an envelope and handed to him. Shortly after that, lot 28, the Oxford Royal, came up. I was interested to find out how much it would bring. After that, I would leave and go back to my apartment, write the article.
Lot 28, the Oxford Royal coin, minted in the time of Charles II, the year of 1681. I am sure...
Excuse me, but that is not the Oxford Royal. Maybe in the right box, but it's the wrong coin. I can see it from here. That is not the Oxford Royal Crown. It is not.
Quiet, please. Quiet. Allow me to examine the lot, please. The gentleman is quite correct. There has been some mistake. This is the wrong coin. I'm sorry, but I must discontinue the selling. This is an important lot. Did anyone in this room ask to see the royal crown before the bidding began? Yes. The lady did. She was the last to handle it before you began, sir.
Madam, did you see the tray before the auction started?
Yes, I examined it and returned it to the box. I know it was the correct one. I made notes about it. Even a rough sketch of the face design.
Well, this is a most awkward situation, Miss...
Summerhaze. Evelyn Summerhaze.
Well, Miss Summerhaze, I hardly know what to say. Everyone here is known to me by sight, if not by name. We have, of course, the name and address of everyone. But yourself?
I live at number 17, Hearthstone Mansions, Trevor Square, Knightsbridge.
Thank you. I have no intention of embarrassing you, but is there anyone to whom we can refer who knows you personally? You must understand that this is no reflection upon yourself. It simply places you on the same terms as the gentleman.
Understand. If you care to refer to the editor of the Evening Star newspaper, he will give you any references you may need. I don't see that I can help more than that. If you have any ladies on the staff, I'll be agreeable to a personal search of my clothing and handbag. I presume that the gentlemen will also raise no objections to submitting to similar treatment.
Order, please. Order.
Now, please, this must be conducted in a decorous manner. I am afraid I shall have to get in touch with our solicitors and perhaps inform the police. Meanwhile, will you all please remain seated?
There was no confusion. It was all too orderly and civilized for that. Nevertheless, I remained until the end. I was the last to go, having made a written statement. The orderly who showed me out reassured me by saying muddles like this had occurred before, but I'm still very much under suspicion as a thief. Can you advise me, Mr. Holmes? This could jeopardize my whole future.
First, a few questions. The young man sitting next to you, did he speak to you again that morning?
Yes, he hung about after the others had gone and wished me well. He hoped I wouldn't be detained.
I see. Now, when he suggested, before the bidding began, that you compared the Oxford Royal with a coin from another tray, was there at any time a slight confusion? Did you, for instance, drop any of the coins?
Well, why, yes. Yes, I think I did. Yes, I was a little embarrassed by the young man's attention, and I dropped the coins in the box. But I picked them up and placed them back immediately, of course.
But could you, quite inadvertently, have returned the coins to the wrong boxes? Transposed them, for instance? Now, think carefully, Miss Summerhays. Is such a thing possible?
Why, yes. I was confused. I could have done so, I suppose. Yes, that is quite possible. Mr. Holmes, is that the answer?
No, I don't think it is the answer at all. But I do think it could be the beginning. Would you like me to investigate the matter from now on, Miss Summerhays?
The following classic Springbok radio commercial comes to you with the courtesy of the Springbok Radio Preservation Society of South Africa.
New Pepsodent has Earlium, an amazing discovery that actually polishes teeth so sparkling clean and white, dulling film can't find a hole. Feel the difference with your tongue.
You wonder where the dullness went when you polish your teeth with Pepsodent.
New Pepsodent, the white toothpaste you can feel working.
Pepsodent.
Looking for space to hang and dry your washing? Washline distributors have the solution. Their rotating and fold-down wash lines take up the smallest spaces. Ideal for townhouses, simplexes and balconies at affordable prices. Galvanized or powder-coated and available in 5 different colors. For 24-hour delivery, installation, reliable and friendly service, phone Washline Distributors on 011 792 2486. That's 011 792 2486. Wash lines for every space and need.
Miss Summerhays' reaction to Holmes' suggestion was one of great pleasure. She protested that she had merely come to him for advice, that this was a case far too minor for his attention, and that she'd be unable to pay for his services. All these doubts Holmes brushed aside with a wave of his hand. He was intrigued, like a student being set a mathematical problem. He was determined to find the correct answer, and as quickly as possible. I half suspected that already he was way ahead of us and had formed a possible theory. Even Summerhays was caught up by his quiet enthusiasm.
Well, it's most generous of you, Mr. Holmes. Naturally, I wish to clear myself of all suspicions and get to the bottom of the whole matter.
Good. Then let me continue with my questioning. There was a search of sorts, I imagine. I mean, the trays must have been examined, the areas around the table, the floors, etc.
Oh, yes. The auctioneer, a gentleman named Dukes, was very thorough. A few officials arrived and asked interminable questions.
This must have meant that everyone left the seats they were occupying. Yes, tell me, Miss Summerhays, did you return to the same chair once the search had been concluded?
Well, yes. Well, at least I think it was the same chair.
Now tell me, and think carefully, can you recall anything happening at that particular time? Anything? However small and unimportant it may seem. Any little detail?
I don't think so. Oh, just a moment. There was one small detail. I went back and sat in what I thought was the same chair, and then the young man who was talking to me earlier, he came along the same row, and he spoke to me again.
Excuse me, but you are occupying my seat, I think.
Oh, well, There are plenty of vacant chairs. The row is almost empty. There was nothing on the seat to say it was yours. There were no coats or carpet.
No, but, well, I like to sit in the same place. You see,
Oh, please take your places. I must ask no one to leave until they have given permission. It has been decided to cancel the rest of this morning's selling. Miss Summerhays, I wonder if you would be good enough to stay for a short while after the others have left.
Then that was that.
So, the young man didn't reclaim his seat. Splendid. Yes, it's all beginning to make sense. Fitting in like a neat jigsaw puzzle.
I must confess that I cannot see it myself.
Well, no matter. The whole point is that if you didn't remove the coin, then someone else did. And the only person who could have done so was the young gentleman next to you. Now, 2 questions. Do you know the man's name? And do you know the number of the lot you say he purchased earlier in the auction?
The answer to both those questions is no. His name was never mentioned. Although I think I heard one of the men call him Oldbury, something like that. And while I know he did make a purchase, I can't remember the lot number.
It doesn't matter. Those facts can be obtained without much trouble. Tell me, when you were asked to stay on after the others had left, did this young man speak to you again? I think you mentioned something about him wishing you good luck.
That's right. He came over and he said that he hoped I wouldn't be further embarrassed by any detention.
Forgive the question, but did he appear rather intimate? Did he touch you at all?
No. But he did come rather near. He actually leaned against the back of the chair. I remember pulling away a little. I was a little embarrassed. But he removed his hands at once, smiled, gave a little bow, and left the rooms. He really was very charming. Good-looking and well-spoken. I can't believe that he had anything to do with the missing coin.
I think that there you were quite wrong. Right, Miss Summerhays, I think that's as far as we can go on the case at the moment. Watson, I wonder if you're going in the direction of White and Mills this morning. They're in Wigmore Street. The owner of the rooms is Clinton White. If he and Dukes, the auctioneer, can grant me an interview, say, at 3:30 this afternoon, I shall be very much obliged.
Yeah, I can go that way in my rounds, Holmes, yes.
Good.
Certainly.
Well, that's all, I think, except for one question, Miss Summerhays.
What is it, Mr. Holmes?
Why are you doing all this?
I beg your pardon?
You are the daughter of Milton Summerhays, are you not? You mentioned earlier that you came to London from Cumberland. That is where the Summerhays live. They've had lands there since the time of William the Conqueror. I can easily look up the history in Who's Who and Debrett. You are related to that family, are you not?
Yes. Lord Summerhays is my uncle.
He is also a very well-known collector, stamps and coins. So what are you doing working for a London newspaper, eking out a living and staying in Knightsbridge? Why, Miss Summerhays?
It must seem very strange to you, Mr. Holmes, but as a famous detective, I have no need to point out to you the details of my personal appearance. I am 25, Mr. Holmes. I'm not exactly a beauty, am I? I've always had an unfortunate face, and my figure is large and ungainly.
Oh, no.
Yes? There is no need to be polite. I am an ugly woman. I am also quite a rich one. I've had many men try to become attached to me, and in every single case it has been for my money. I made up my mind that I would not be used in this fashion. I would not let my life slip by. And so I came to London to try to prove to myself that I am a person of some worth and intelligence who can be independent and worthwhile. I'm sorry. I'm afraid you have made me speak too freely about myself.
I apologize, Miss Summerhays. Please don't be upset. I'm sure you will be successful in working out your personal problems. You are a woman of great courage and determination. You will not fail. You are greatly to be admired.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes. May I go now, please? Of course, I shall be available at my home address or the offices of the Evening Star if you should need me.
I don't think I shall trouble you again. But rest assured, this whole matter will be cleared up quite soon, and there will be no more trouble. I promise you that. Good morning to you, Miss Summerhays.
After Miss Summerhays left, Holmes hurriedly scribbled a short note to the owner of the salesrooms in Wigmore Street, Clifton White, and I left for my rounds. I was able to deliver the note quite early, and although I missed Holmes at lunchtime, I was determined not to be left out of things. And so, at 3:30 that afternoon, I made my way back to White and Mill's salesrooms. Holmes was already there.
Watson, I had an idea that you would wish to join us. Let me introduce you. Clinton White, Dr. John Watson.
We made ourselves known earlier in the day. Glad you could come back, Watson. This is a most delicate affair. Things have often gone wrong in this business, but we've always managed to hush things up. I hope there'll be no trouble this time, no publicity. I mean, the lady from the newspaper.
There will be no trouble, I assure you. Now, Watson, to give you a clearer idea of our position. We know that the gentleman who sat next to Miss Summerhayes and engaged her in conversation quite a few times was a Mr. Derek Olmsted, who lives in Portman Close. It's very near here, and I've sent a message round to him. I expect him at 4 o'clock. That gives us half an hour to finalize things. Mr. White, would you be good enough to show us to the room used yesterday for the auction?
Of course, this way. It is locked, of course. Will be until next Saturday. Through here. The place has been cleared and cleaned, as you can see. All the chairs have been placed to one side.
Yes, in neat rows. Let me see. Yes. Yes, I think there will be no trouble at all. I imagine that while you do not wish for publicity, the fact that the public is now made aware of the Oxford Royal Crown, interest in the coin will boost its value. You will get a better price?
Fortunately, yes. That would be the case if we can regain the wretched thing.
Oh, no difficulty in that. Here you are. Here it is.
Mr. Holmes, this can't be... But it is. It is the Charles II Oxford Royal. But this is miraculous.
Oh, not at all. It was neatly hidden beneath the seat of that chair. They're all identical, of course, but there's a mark on the back of one, a number 28, scratched on the top of the wooden frame. There, so you have the precious coin. And now, all we have to do is wait until it's proved who took it. Shall we adjourn to the next room for half an hour?
Already, I was beginning to put the pieces together. It only remained for Holmes to catch the culprit. We left the door to the auction rooms ajar and concealed ourselves in the alcove leading to the passage as 4 o'clock approached.
There you see the door is opening slowly. Someone is entering the room. Stay exactly where you are and don't move, please.
Who are you? What are you doing here?
My name is Sherlock Holmes. I have no need to ask your name or what you are doing here. You came to collect the missing Oxford Royal, didn't you? Will you please produce the coin you have just placed in your breast pocket?
I don't know what you're talking about. I came here to see Mr. White. I left some gloves here, and...
It's no use, Olmsted. Holmes has explained exactly how you bought a quite ordinary lot at the auction yesterday, knowing it was the Royal Crown. Kindly produce that coin.
Oh, very well. Here you are. But I bought it legally. I took only what you sold to me. I didn't switch the coins.
No. You simply noticed that Miss Summerhayes did, and so you took advantage of the fact. When people were searched, you had to conceal the coin, so you slipped it into the crack beneath your chair seat. Later, you tried to get it back. But you couldn't. The lady was occupying the place. So you had to mark the seat to identify it and come back later to collect it. Well, it's now your decision, White. Do you prosecute this man or not?
Well, I don't know.
Here, please take the coin. Take it back. You'll make far more money on it now than you would have done yesterday. Please, think of the publicity. I shall be a ruined man. Please take the coin.
No, you can keep it, Olmsted. You didn't think we'd take a chance like that, having found the real one, do you? This is simply 2 pennies stuck together. Keep it as a reminder that honesty is always the best policy.
The following classic Springbok radio commercial comes to you with the courtesy of the Springbok Radio Preservation Society of South Africa.
Villa Rosa, the gay red wine. Villa Bianca, the sprightly white.
Villa Rosa, Villa Bianca.
Lively, exciting, the perfect complement to the perfect meal. The wines of good living.
Some things in life are obvious and easy. If you have a business providing a good service or selling a product, you need to let people know. But how do you do that? Easy. Just tell them here on SpringbokRadio.com. Internet radio is about talking to people in their own homes. Your message becomes part of the sound they've chosen to listen to. To find out more about advertising on SpringbokRadio.com, contact Dave Dupree on Johannesburg 011 678 5176. Or for outside South Africa, 2711 678 5176. Or email dave@springbokradio.com.
We were able to reassure Evelyn Summerhayes that all was well. The coin had been recovered and was later sold at a highly improved price. We heard no more of Derek Olmsted. There was talk that he'd gone abroad, as Holmes said.
He was an amateur criminal, really. I mean, what use was the coin to him? It's not like stealing a string of jewels, which can be broken up and reset and become marketable. A coin remains a coin. If he tried to sell it to a dealer, the whole crime would be exposed. No, no, no. A foolish, greedy young man. And Evelyn Summerhayes was right. It was hardly worth my notice. But it helped everyone concerned. And after all, it was all over in one short day, wasn't it? Now, well, join me in a drink, Watson, and let's toast our next case of real crime. It's about time I crossed swords with a gentleman known as Moriarty.
Listen again next Sunday to The Stories of Sherlock Holmes, with Graham Armitage as Holmes and Kerry Jordan as Dr. Watson.
What is it, Mrs. Hudson? I came immediately. I received your message. What's wrong with Sherlock Holmes?
Well, I think he's busted an ankle, sir. He's had a nasty fall right here outside the house. I managed to get him up to his room, but oh dear, you know what he's like. Do come in. Perhaps he'll listen to you. He won't take a blind bit of notice of me. Come in. Do your best with him.
We present The Stories of Sherlock Holmes.
A matter of deduction.
Looking for space to hang and dry your washing? Washline distributors have the solution. Their rotating and fold-down wash lines take up the smallest spaces. Ideal for townhouses, simplexes and balconies at affordable prices. Galvanized or powder-coated and available in 5 different colors. For 24-hour delivery, installation, reliable and friendly service, phone Washline distributors on 011 792 2486. That's 011 792 2486. Wash lines for every space and need.
Die volgende klassieke advertensie van Springbok Radio se verlede kom met die vergunning van die Springbok Radio Bewaringsvereniging van Suid-Afrika.
Net meer as 'n dekade gelede het 'n paar versiende Suid-Afrikaners bymekaar gekom en die enorme uitdagings van die internasionale oliehandel aangedurf. Vandag, met 'n topgehalte brandstof, 'n volledige reeks olies en reeds meer as 300 volstasies tot in die verste uithoeke van ons land, bied Trek jou die een bymiddel wat regtig saak maak. Trots, want Trek is ons eie. Trek in by die kwagga en maak vol met trots.
One Sunday morning, I'd received an urgent message from Mrs. Hudson to call at my old rooms at Baker Street. Sherlock Holmes was in some sort of trouble. Naturally, I dropped everything and hurried round. I found my old friend lying on the sofa in the sitting room with his right ankle up on a cushion. He refused to take his injuries seriously, but I insisted on a thorough examination.
I told Mrs. Hudson not to bother you, but you know what she's like. She'll have to make a fuss. It's only a slight sprain. Nothing broken.
Well, just hold still for a moment, Holmes, and let me be the judge. Yes, I think you may be right, but the swelling's considerable. You'll certainly have to keep it up for a while. Cold compresses will help. It must be very painful. Right, well, I think that's all I can do for you at the moment, Holmes. If you require anything else, you must just let me know. Oh, seems we have another visitor. Now, whoever it is, don't let them get you up and about. The more you rest that ankle, the quicker it will take to mend. Now, you must promise me to be sensible about this, Holmes. I know what a bad patient you can be, so just try and curb your natural impatience, won't you?
Excuse me, Mr. Holmes. Inspector Lestrade to see you. Is it all right if I let him up?
Of course it is, Mrs. Hudson. I'm not at death's door, you know. Oh, and put the kettle on, will you? I might as well have a nice hot cup of tea.
Tea is already on the way. You will stay for a cup, won't you, Doctor?
Oh, yes. Thank you, Mrs. Hudson. That would be most agreeable.
Very good, sir. This way, Inspector.
Holmes, Watson, quite like old times. I heard that you had suffered an injury, Holmes. Nothing serious, I trust?
Very minor, I'm glad to say. Watson's just attended to me and agrees that it's nothing to worry about. Sit down, Lestrade. Now, tell me what brings you here. Surely it can't just be to inquire about my health.
Oh, I was passing this way. Thought I'd drop in. I see that you've been busy reading the papers. What do you think of this body on the train?
Well, there's hardly sufficient data in this newspaper report. It merely says that upon the arrival of the 2:30 train at Tilbury yesterday, a porter discovered the body of a dead man in a first-class carriage. The man was identified as Mr. Harold Brightly, and he seems to have met his death through a blow on the side of the head, although no weapon that could have caused the wound has yet been found. I presume that there could have been many reasons for this.
Any theories?
Hardly. You know, I never go by conjecture, only by facts. Brightly could have been struck by an assailant who left the carriage at an earlier stop, taking the murder weapon with him. On the other hand, he might have leaned out of the open window and been hit by an object on the side of the line, even a passing train. But you must have a professional interest in this, Lestrade. What have you uncovered so far?
Well, I must admit that I have been called in. The Essex police asked for Scotland Yard, and I was approached. I'm happy to say that I've solved the whole case. Not bad in so short a time, eh? Brightly was murdered, all right, by his own nephew.
Just a moment. Please start from the beginning. It's only from there that I can sift out the evidence and form my own opinions.
Well, to start with the body. At first it appeared that Brightly had been struck a terrific blow by a blunt instrument. There was a wound of about 2 inches on the right side of his head. But, on closer examination by the police surgeon, it was found that death was due to a bullet from what would seem to be an ordinary army rifle, which was found embedded in the brain.
Shooting in a train. Interesting. What position was the body in?
In the right-hand corner facing the engine, although I don't consider that of any great importance.
All facts are important in a case of murder, but pray continue.
Well, of course, the first thing to do was to find out more about the dead man and discover a reason why anyone should wish to murder him. Now, Brightly lived with his daughter in a small place called Benfleet on the way to Southend. He worked in the city, and yesterday, being Saturday, he left his office at about 1. He lunched at a restaurant near Fenchurch Station and took the 2:30 train. Brightly was in business with his nephew, importers, a young fellow called Roy Simmons. Roy Simmons' mother was Brightly's sister, who'd been dead for a couple of years, and in the Brightly was a very aristocratic man, travelled first class. Simmons is a bit of a wild type, not much cash, always travels third. He almost missed the train, jumped aboard at the last minute. He knew his mates in the army were in the carriage higher up, and so, and this is the interesting part, Holmes, he admits to having scrambled along the footboard outside the train to the third-class carriages. The workman on the line reported having seen a man in uniform with a rifle on his back hanging on to the outside of the train.
So you think he was able to shoot his uncle through the open carriage window and then join his friends in their
Well, the moment
compartment?
the inquest is over, I shall issue an order for Roy Simmons' arrest. And although I say it myself, I think it's extremely quick work.
Oh, it's quick all right, Lestrade. There's no doubt about that. But is it correct? That is the point.
Here you are, sir. Tea.
A timely interruption, Mrs. Hudson. Would you like to pour, Watson? I'm somewhat incapacitated. Oh, and Lestrade, do promise me that you won't make any move on this rather unusual case until I've given the matter far more thought, won't you? 2 sugars for me, as usual. Thank you, Watson.
Holmes managed to steer the conversation away from Lestrade's latest case, but I could tell that his interest had been fully roused. He motioned me to stay on after we'd taken tea, and when Lestrade had left, he once again picked up the newspaper and studied the account of the murder.
Singular case, Watson. Of course, Lestrade is flushed with pride, and I suspect that he only called in here to show me that he was in complete command of the situation.
Well, he does seem to have a very good case, Holmes.
I question that, Watson. Unfortunately, I'm unable to carry out a full investigation. I can only think the matter out from this couch. As you know, I always like to visit the scene of the crime personally and collect my own facts from first-hand observation. But this wretched sprained ankle prevents any such course. I can but rely upon second-hand evidence. You wouldn't be prepared to act for me on this matter, would you, Watson?
Well, I'll do everything I can, Holmes, but as you know, I've not your powers of observation and deduction. I could very easily jump to the wrong conclusion.
Not nearly as readily as our good friend Lestrade, I do assure you. So you will help?
Well, if I can, of course, yes.
Good. Then the first thing I would like you to do is this. Oh, dear. Does seem to be my morning for visitors, doesn't it? Mrs. Hudson will be asking for weekends off in future.
No, she won't while you're laid up. She's far too loyal. Would you rather I came again later, Holmes?
No. I should prefer you to stay if you have the time.
Oh, very well.
Excuse me, Mr. Holmes. Young lady and gentleman to see you. Mr. Roy Simmons and Miss Joyce Brightly.
This becomes most interesting. Pray do come in, both of you. Meet my friend and colleague, Dr. Watson. Excuse the fact that I cannot stand.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry to have called without an appointment, but this really is a most urgent matter. May I introduce Miss Brightly?
Please be seated.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes.
I think I can tell why you're here. You've been interviewed by Scotland Yard, have you not, Mr. Simmons? And you fear an immediate arrest for the murder of your uncle.
Oh, that's true, Mr. Holmes. But I didn't do it. I swear I didn't do it.
He didn't, Mr. Holmes. I know he didn't. Oh, please, can't you help us?
I will certainly try my best. If it's any consolation, I must say straight away that I believe you are entirely innocent, Mr. Simmons. I'm quite sure of that. But how can we prove it? That is the tricky question, isn't it? Only by finding the true murderer.
Enjoy the best of both worlds. Only 2 hours drive from Johannesburg and Pretoria and half an hour by air. The magnificent Sundown Ranch Hotel and Lion Park, just 10 kilometers from the Pilanesberg Game Reserve and Sun City Resort. It offers an exciting escape from the hustle and bustle of everyday life. Reasonable rates, excellent food, friendly service and comfortable air-conditioned rooms. It will ensure a memorable stay. Activities include tennis, squash, horse riding, the Lion Park and much, much more. Call now to make your reservation on 014-573-1000. That's 014-573-1000 or visit their website at www.restinations.co.za/Sundown Ranch. The Sundown Ranch Hotel and Lion Park, 2 worlds in one.
I had a chance to study the young couple and quickly formed the opinion that although they were cousins, they were very fond of each other. They made no secret about this. Roy Simmons explained.
I think I must explain, Mr. Holmes, that one of the reasons that I didn't get along very well with my uncle was the fact that Joyce and I have been in love for some while. There was a resentment upon his part. We tried to explain. He wouldn't listen. He was always a very stubborn man. He was against cousins marrying, and, well, I know he thought I just wasn't good enough for Joyce.
I think that had he lived, he'd have come round to accepting us together. But then this dreadful tragedy occurred, and for the way that Scotland Yard works it out, things look very black for us. That's why we decided to come to you. Oh, please, you say you believe in Roy, but that you have to find out the true murderer. But how can you do so, Mr. Holmes? There is simply no one who has a motive to kill my father. How can there be?
All this will be revealed in good time, Miss Brightly. I've requested Inspector Lestrade of Scotland Yard not to make any positive moves against Mr. Simmons until I've had time to collect many more facts. Tell me when the inquest will be held.
On Tuesday morning. It means we have so little time.
I suppose you'll be unable to be present, Mr. Holmes.
My good friend Dr. Watson tells me that I must remain here and not put any weight upon my injured ankle. I regret that all inquiries will have to be done for me by Watson. However, I see no reason to despair. I take it that you can hold yourself available for any interviews or journeys that I can arrange on your behalf, Mr. Simmons?
Oh, yes. Yes, of course. Here's my card. I live in a small apartment in Ashworth Road, Paddington. I'll be at home from now on.
I shall be back at the family home at Benfleet. Please feel free to call me at any time, Mr. Holmes. It's imperative that this dreadful tragedy is solved immediately.
I shall certainly do my best. Just a few questions before you leave, and then the investigation will be taken over by Dr. Watson. Now, a detailed account of your movements from the moment you caught that train in your soldier's uniform, if you please, Mr. Simmons.
Roy Simmons gave us a clear account of his actions of the previous day, and I could tell from the frank and yet clumsy way he told his tale that it was the truth. It was a confession of some bravado, but I believed every word of it. Holmes sat back on the sofa, the tips of the fingers of each hand placed gently together, his eyes half closed as though picturing all he was told. Eventually he smiled and dismissed the couple, promising them that he would take action immediately. When they'd been shown out by Mrs. Hudson, he made several immediate requests.
Firstly, Watson, my books. Railway timetable and ordnance maps from the shelves by the fireplace, if you don't mind.
Yes.
This case is becoming remarkably interesting. I think you'll find the red bound books are the ones. A 6-inch survey map that covers the countryside from Raynham to Purdham.
Let's see. These the ones you want?
Yes, those are they. Yes, now this is what I'm looking for. Come, study this with me, Watson. You see, here is the railway, and here, running alongside, is the country road. Now, it breaks way round about here, as it enters Raynham Marsh. There are rifle ranges there, and here. Now, this presumably was where the reserve soldiers were doing their afternoon practice. Roy Simmons must have been shooting on this one. Yes, this is most interesting. I'm afraid I must ask you to take a trip down to Raynham, Watson. I want as much information as can be obtained from the warden in charge of the Rangers. Take Roy Simmons with you. He'll know the terrain. And while you're at it, I think you should go by train from Fenchurch Street, occupy a first-class carriage, sit on the right-hand side facing the engine, and carry out a simple experiment. Will you?
Of course I agreed, and some 2 hours later found myself on the South End train from London. I had the maps open upon my knee, and Roy Simmons explained the countryside in great detail. I was very conscious of my own inadequacies, realizing that Holmes would make far more out of everything than I could. But I tried to follow his instructions as carefully as possible. Now, what I wish you to do, Simmons, is to stand up over there by the opposite window and hold that walking stick as though you would a rifle. Now, point it at me. Now, hold your aim as steadily as you can.
Very well. I think it won't be easy. I might add that I'm not the best of shots. That's why I was part of the team that had to put in extra practice. However, here goes. Yes. Now, you mean like this?
That's it, as though the stick's coming through the window.
Tricky. Oh. How's that?
Yes, I think I see what Holmes is after. You're having a hard time pointing that stick accurately. And if you were outside on the running board holding on with one hand, it would be virtually impossible to aim accurately through the window. The motion of the train has thrown you off. Well, that's one theory taken care of.
Thank goodness for that. I don't mind admitting that I was scared stiff hanging on out there anyway. It was only my mates cheering me on that kept me going. But, Dr. Watson, my uncle was killed in this train. I didn't do it, so who the devil did?
Well, I can't answer that, but a glimmer of light is beginning to dawn. Perhaps after we've visited the rifle ranges, we shall have a better idea. How much farther to the stop where we get off? And will there be anyone there on a Sunday afternoon? The journey didn't take more than another 15 minutes, and there was a warden in charge of the Raynham Marsh Range. He explained that there was no activity at that particular time.
Oh, nothing going on at the moment. Always quiet on a Sunday. It's weekdays and Saturdays that we're busy.
Yesterday, the Army Reserves were in action, I understand. Do you mind showing me exactly where the practice took place?
It was over there on number 8 range, wasn't it, Warden? I was part of the team.
Oh, that's so. A bunch of right rotten shots you were, too. Yes, that's where you were firing. You notice that the butts are placed right against the fence. Beyond that's the marsh and the river.
Oh, so that if anyone was particularly wild with their firing, there could be no danger from flying bullets.
Oh, heaven help us, no. That's why the place is designed as it is. Very little danger here. The red flags go up, of course, and no one's allowed to walk across. Never been any accidents, I'm thankful to say. Of course, on the other side, there's a house or two and the railway, but, the fire doesn't go in that direction.
Excuse me, Warden, but wasn't there other activity going on down here during yesterday afternoon? I think I heard some of the men talking about some unusual firing.
Oh, aye, that's right, yeah. Over there, number 9 range. Special testing going on from Woolwich. Newfangled sort of gun, a sort of repeater device. Testing it out, they were. I can't say whether it was a great success or not. War Office were in charge, you see. It's all very secret and hush-hush.
I see. Well, there doesn't seem to be anything else to keep us here, Simmons. We'd better be getting back to Baker Street and report to Holmes. I'm afraid he won't be at all impressed. I'm not a very good substitute, I'm afraid. Oh, thank you, Warden. You've been very kind. Come on, Simmons. We shall just be in time to take the return train. Back at Baker Street, I made the report to Holmes in as detailed a manner as possible. Roy Simmons helped me by drawing a rough sketch of the position of the rifle ranges and the railway and confirming all that had taken place. Holmes was naturally impatient and annoyed that he had been able to conduct the investigation in person. He studied the survey maps and our sketches in great detail.
It's no use, Watson. I shall have to go down there myself.
Oh, but Holmes, you can't. It's important that you do not use that leg in its present state.
I shall take a stout stick and put very little weight upon the ankle. I'm quite convinced that the answer to this case lies on that rifle range. We've proved that no one on that train could have committed the murder. The rifle range has got to be the answer. Please, be good enough to get in touch with Lestrade at Scotland Yard. He must hire a 4-wheeler, and we shall drive down there. Now, there's a path that goes across the marshes. I shall conduct the investigation from there. Come. Enough time has been wasted as it is. We must get back to Raynham while it's still light. Hurry, Watson. Hurry.
And so, yet again, I made the journey down to Raynham. Holmes was silent for most of the journey, and I could tell that Lestrade thought the whole thing a waste of time. Once on the rifle range, Holmes produced some powerful field glasses and studied the countryside. He seemed particularly interested in number 9 range, where the new rifle tests had been conducted.
Most extraordinary. It's very good of you to give us so much of your time, Warden. Tell me a little more about this test rifle. Was it held by hand by one of the men from Woolwich?
Oh, no, sir. A special clamp was used to hold it quite steady. Very powerful gun it is, too. Something went wrong right at the end of the test. It slipped from the clamp, I believe, and the last round must have gone off over in the river over there.
Ah, something went wrong and the target was missed. That's just the information I was looking for. Watson, Lestrade, study the scene before you. Imagine, if you can, what would happen if bullets from a highly powered gun got sprayed about this range.
I can't see that it would make much difference. As the warden says, they would simply have gone by the target and into the marsh or river.
Yes, unless one bullet was deflected in some way. It is possible. In fact, more than possible. Watson, lend me that rather burly shoulder of yours to lean upon. I'm about to hop my way across the grass and show you just how Brightly was killed. It was not murder at all. It was a pure accident. Come, let me explain.
As we helped Holmes to stagger across the rifle range, he began to explain his theory. It all began to make sense. Even Lestrade was impressed and forced to listen. I was staggered that the facts could have been placed together so accurately without Holmes having been anywhere near the scene of the death.
It was clear from the beginning that Simmons could never have killed his uncle. In the first place, if he was on the train, then he would have had to fire at very close range. A rifle bullet would have simply gone through the man's head and not lodged in the brain. It was obvious that the bullet that killed Brightly was very near the end of its flight, and so must have been fired from a long way off. Now, although the rifle used on this range was pointing in the wrong direction, supposing it hit that metal flagstaff in front of us, it would then have ricocheted off, been deflected, and entered the open window of the passing train.
A bullet deflected in this way usually turns over and over in its flight, and that would account for the unusual size of the wound. There. Look up there on the flagstaff. That is a recent scar where the paint has been chipped away. I submit to you that that is how Brightly was killed. Check the times of the train against the last round fired by that new rifle from Woolwich, and I think you have the case solved. Don't you, Lestrade? And an innocent man will be able to go free. Saved purely by a method of deduction. Elementary. Not so, my dear Watson?
Listen again next Sunday to The Stories of Sherlock Holmes, with Graham Armitage as Holmes and Kerry Jordan as Dr. Watson.
Who is it?
It's Jimmy Richardson, Mr. Bishop.
Oh, very well, Jimmy. Wait just a moment.
What the? Who are you?
Get him quickly.
Call him quickly. Don't make so much noise. Get him.
All right, I'll call him. And he got lost. Yes, easy now. That's it. Good. Good, he's out. We've got him.
We present The Stories of Sherlock Holmes.
The Missing Inventor.
Over the years, I've been privileged to chronicle hundreds of the cases that Sherlock Holmes has worked on, and most of them, I'm happy to say, have been extremely successful. A few have been failures, and many so secret that Holmes has strictly forbidden me to write even the briefest account of them. But as the years pass and the names of the people involved fade from importance and the events become forgotten reports in the yellowing pages of newspapers, Holmes has relaxed his rules and allowed me to give an accurate account of how his influence and authority has actually changed the policies of many high officials. There was one case that is now over 10 years old. It happened back in 1881. I was still living in the rooms at 221B Baker Street. I clearly remember that it was summer, and for England, a rather beautiful summer, filled with clear skies, warm days, and leisurely evenings. But Holmes was rather bored, and, as always in these circumstances, he scanned the newspapers for any sort of unsolved crime.
Nothing at all, Watson. The fine weather has made all London content. Not a single crime of interest reported in the daily press.
Oh, surely you should be glad of that, Holmes. No law-abiding citizen can actually want a crime to happen.
No, of course not. But the average person can give vent to his feelings in various ways. He can read books of violence and murder, adventure stories where the hero does things he dare not do himself. He can go to the theatre and rid himself of the emotions of anger and hatred. Unfortunately, I am unable to do that. I have to remain apart, to be analytical, dispassionate. I need something real to occupy my mind, not some fictional fantasy. That's why the only thing in this evening's paper that interests me is the so-called agony column, the personal cry for help. For instance, listen to this. It says here, "Colin, please come back. I forgive you and I am truly sorry, Florence." Now, that's human drama, if you like. Now, there's another here. The gentleman who helped an elderly lady to a hansom cab on Tuesday the 15th in Regent Street, please answer this box number where he will hear something to his advantage. Or even better still, what about this one? "All is well with higher clergy. Await instructions, Seabird." Now, doesn't that stir the imagination, Watson? Can you work out what those messages mean in terms of human relationships?
No, I can't. But, well, we approach life from different angles, Holmes. I'm concerned with the physical well-being of my patients, and I'm content to heal their bodies as best I can. I leave the imaginative workings of the mind to you.
Ah, a visitor. This could prove interesting. I wonder if Mrs. Hudson's still with us.
Yes, I think she is yet to say good night. She usually pops her head in. Yes, I think she's answering the door.
Well, I know I have no appointments this evening. Oh, well, at least it will alleviate the boredom.
Oh, excuse me, Mr. Holmes. A young gentleman to see you, sir. He says it's an urgent matter, but he ain't got no appointment. Have you the time?
All the time in the world, Mrs. Hudson. Show him in, please.
Yeah, right, sir. This way, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I must beg your pardon. This is an intrusion, but I do need your help. You are Sherlock Holmes?
At your service. This is my friend and colleague, Dr. John Watson.
How do you do?
Whatever it is you have to say may be said in front of him. We work together on most of my cases. Please do sit down. I see that you have walked here. You must be fatigued in this hot weather. Place your jacket over that chair. Feel free to smoke your pipe if you wish.
Oh, thank you.
Now, what is it that you're so anxious to talk to me about? Is it something connected with your past in the merchant navy, or your present job, which is to do with explosives?
Good heavens, Mr. Holmes. I was told that you were swift to deduce things, but how do you know all this about me?
I know very little about you, except that you walk like a seaman, that you have a tattoo mark from Australia on your right forearm, and that while your hands are well kept, suggesting that you do not indulge in manual work, the hairs on both hands and arms have been recently scorched. Those type of burns are usually associated with experiments with some form of gunpowder. Are you perhaps a scientist of some sort?
Well, I'm amazed at your perception. Yes, I am. My name is Jimmy Richardson. I've had quite a checkered career, which did include a long stint at sea. I've always been interested in chemical and explosive research. At the moment, I work for Mr. Giles Bishop in his experimental workshop at Twickenham. I've been with him for a little over a year now, and, well, it's because of him that I'm here. You see, Mr. Bishop is an inventor, quite a brilliant one. He's been perfecting a new type of gun. If he succeeds in selling the invention, it could revolutionize modern infantry warfare. He was to have given a demonstration next week. Everything has been going splendidly, and we are both sure of success. But, well, you see, Mr. Bishop has simply disappeared.
Disappeared?
Yes, without trace. We were due to carry out final tests at the workshop yesterday afternoon. I arrived, let myself in with my key, and did some paperwork while waiting for him. He didn't arrive. I worked until 10 o'clock and then packed up and went home. I thought some technical matter arising from his negotiations with the War Office might have delayed him. Well, I woke early this morning and was once again at work before him. When he didn't arrive by 10 o'clock, I once again locked up and went round to his lodgings. The landlady, Mrs. Craddock, said he hadn't been seen since the previous evening. His bed was not slept in. He must have been missing for 2 days, and I'm at my wit's end. I don't know what could have happened to him.
You've been to the police?
No, I think the very nature of Mr. Bishop's work indicates that I should stay away from the police. Frankly, Mr. Holmes, I'm worried that someone is after our new invention. In the hands of a foreign power, it could have a devastating effect upon our military position in many parts of the world.
You have evidence that the secrets of this new gun have been leaked abroad?
No evidence at all. I've made a complete check of the workshop. All the equipment is intact. All the relative papers are safely under lock and key. Nothing is missing. I would know if there was. It's all untouched exactly as it should be for our demonstration.
And then you're worried for Mr. Bishop personally?
Yes. He's a wonderful man. It would be much more to the advantage of a foreign power to kidnap him and force all the knowledge from him than it would be to simply take the gun and its secrets. Please, won't you help to try and trace what has happened to him? It is far more important than I've been able to explain. I know that Mr. Bishop would not go off at this crucial time without letting me know what he was doing. He must have been abducted, forced away against his will. It's an urgent matter, Mr. Holmes. Please say that you will help.
Of course, Holmes agreed. Even if it had not been such a slack period in his career, I think he would have taken the case. His first reaction was typical. After taking Jimmy Richardson's address and making an appointment to see him early the next morning, he invited me out to dine. We hailed a hansom cab, and to my surprise, Holmes requested that we be driven to the Diogenes Club. And once there, of course, he asked for his brother Mycroft, who invited us to join him.
There was another gentleman in the party, Mr. James Jules.
Good to see you both. Do join us. Allow me to introduce you. This is Mr. James Jules. Jules is my brother Sherlock and his colleague, Dr. John Watson.
How do you do?
Jules is in the Defense Ministry.
How do you do? This is the most timely meeting. As a matter of fact, I have one or two queries regarding an interesting case that has come my way. Perhaps between the two of you, you might be able to give me a little advice.
I've heard so much about you from your brother that I doubt if I can advise you on anything. But I shall be a very avid listener.
Let's order drinks, and you can tell us what's on your mind, Sherlock. Waiter, same again, please. And 2 more scotch and sodas. That will be to your liking, won't it, Watson?
Thank you, yes.
I know my brother's taste. Well, now, tell us what it is that you're interested in at the moment, Sherlock. More murder and mayhem?
I sincerely hope not. No, I'm inquiring about an inventor named Giles Bishop. I believe he's recently been in touch with the War Office. I'd like to check up on him.
Jules will tell you more than I can. Although I do know the name, of course.
Giles Bishop. Yes, I know him. Bit of a crank. Comes up with all manner of ideas. Some of them might work, but they're very extreme. As a matter of fact, he's got an application in for a demonstration regarding some newfangled invention. Wants to sell it to an armaments firm. Can only do so if the defense boys recommend it. I can tell you here and now the chances are very slim. Of course, one has to have experiments in all fields in order to get progress. But frankly, I'd say Bishop's simply far too visionary. Lots of our people think he's as mad as a hatter. What's your interest in him, Holmes?
Well, I'm not quite sure. I should very much like to meet him. But he seems to be out of town at the moment.
A good thing, if you ask me. Won't be bothering us every 5 minutes. I'd say whatever your problem is, you'll be well advised to forget it.
Here are the drinks. Your very good health, gentlemen.
I was surprised that Holmes appeared to take James Jules' advice, for he immediately changed the subject, and during and after an excellent dinner, the matter was not referred to again. We left the club quite early and took a hansom back to Baker Street. Holmes appeared thoughtful and hardly spoke. It wasn't until we were actually outside 221B that he showed any sign of interest. For having paid off the cab, we found young Jimmy Richardson waiting on the pavement.
Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson, I've been waiting for you. I have to tell you, I have received a letter from Mr. Bishop. He says there is nothing wrong and that he has simply gone away for a few days to think things out. But the letter is a fake. I'm sure it is. Please, won't you study it and give me some advice? I know it's late, but please, won't you agree?
I'd rarely known a case start off so very tamely. I was surprised when, instead of dismissing Jimmy Richardson, Holmes actually readily agreed and showed the young man upstairs to our sitting room. There, he asked to see the letter from the missing inventor.
Dear Richardson, a short note to say that I've gone away into the country for a week. I've been at it too hard, and I'm inclined to rather overdo it a bit. I want you to clearly understand that there is nothing to worry about. I will see to everything when I return. I want you to simply carry on as usual. Yours, Giles B. This is his handwriting?
Oh, yes, it's his handwriting. No doubt about that. I don't think anyone has forged the note, but he must have been forced to write it. To start with, he would never call me Richardson. He would write Dear Jimmy. And then here, he would never sign himself Giles B. He would write G. Bishop.
Yes. Also, I take it that he's a very educated man.
Oh, yes, most learned.
And yet he has split 3 infinitives in one short note. Yes, I think you must be right. The note is deliberately couched in this way to arouse suspicions and put us off the track. Did this come through the post?
Yes, here, the envelope. See, you can just make out the postmark.
Richmond, Surrey.
Do you think that I should get in touch with the police after all, Mr. Holmes? Get them to alert the Richmond squad with a description of Mr. Bishop?
No, I don't. If this letter was written under duress, then it would not be posted in an area where we can trace it back. Yes, I think I shall start from quite the opposite end. It's late now. There's nothing more we can do tonight. But first thing tomorrow morning, I should like you to take Watson and me to Mr. Bishop's lodgings. That is where we shall start. Now, shall we agree to meet at 7 o'clock here for an early breakfast?
Jimmy Richardson was right on time the next morning, and Holmes, who had spent a good 20 minutes in deep thought over the agony columns of the morning papers, served him breakfast with no mention of his plans for the day. We took a cab and drove to Giles Bishop's lodgings. They were on the top floor of a terraced house in St. Margaret's Avenue, Spring Grove. Mrs. Mabel Craddock received us with genteel disapproval.
Of course, you may see the rooms, although I consider it quite unnecessary. I received a short note only yesterday from Mr. Bishop to say that he decided to spend a week in the country. It's quite clear that he will return when he thinks fit.
May I see that note, Mrs. Craddock?
I don't think I kept it. It was just a short note in his own hand. I recognise the handwriting. Oh, really, Mr. Holmes, I don't know what all the fuss is about. This way, please, up the stairs. Mr. Richardson, you've been here before as Mr. Bishop's guest. Would you like to show these gentlemen the way?
Yes, of course.
I'd be obliged if you would make sure everything is neat and orderly when you come down. I would not like Mr. Bishop to feel his belongings had been disturbed in any way.
I assure you that we shall not interfere. It's simply the fact that we wish to find out exactly where Mr. Bishop has gone. It is very important. A matter regarding his work.
Oh, I see.
One other point. When precisely did you last see Mr. Bishop?
When he retired for the night 3 nights ago, he went to his rooms. I heard nothing. But he must have changed his mind and gone out again. For the next morning, he had gone. His bed had not been slept in, you see. He must have decided to pack and leave that night. I did think it rather odd as the front door was still bolted. He must have let himself out the back way. I was a little disturbed at first, but of course the note he sent was put everything all right. Up those stairs. I shall be waiting for you when you come down, when you finish.
Thank you, Mrs. Craddock. Please follow me. So, she had a note as well. I wonder what clues Mr. Bishop left, hoping that she would realize all was not well.
I'm afraid Mrs. Craddock isn't the type to understand subtleties.
No, in here.
So these are his rooms. This is the living room, and through here, I presume, is the bedroom. Yes, I think this is the room we want. It looks out over the back roofs, doesn't it? A sash window, and outside, yes, a small fire escape to the roof. Just give me a hand with this, will you, Watson?
Well, you think the bishop might have left through the window, Holmes?
Well, that would certainly explain why Mrs. Craddock didn't hear anything.
Yes, and also how the front door remained bolted.
Just a moment. Don't touch anything until I've made a thorough examination. Yes, there are fresh scratches on the brown paintwork. See here and out on the ledge, near the iron staircase. Several cigarette butts. Did Giles Bishop smoke, Richardson?
No, not at all. He maintained that it was too dangerous in the job that he's doing.
Yes, I see. Well, then it seems clear that the abduction, if there was one, took place from here. Come, Watson, let's see if we can follow a trail. I have an idea we're on the right lines at last.
Holmes clambered out of the window onto the iron fire escape, and I followed him. The staircase led both up and down. Holmes went up, and we found ourselves on a flat rooftop. It seemed to lead to nowhere, until Holmes pointed out yet another small flight of iron stairs that took us up and across yet another roof. Holmes moved slowly and carefully, examining the slates and tiles that gave way on either side. Eventually, he was satisfied.
Yes, there's no doubt about it, Watson. I should say 2 men were involved. They carried or dragged our man across this space on the roof, and then...
And then what, Holmes? Having got him up here, what the devil did they do?
Well, there's only one explanation. Look, down there. See that roof?
Yeah. Large glass fan-light. Holmes? Is it possible that they took him through there?
That's the only explanation.
Well, what should we do? Climb down there and break in?
No, I think that would be a little premature. No, Watson. We must spend the rest of the day making preparations. I must get in touch with Mycroft once again and visit a few newspaper offices. And then tonight, with the aid of Mrs. Craddock's back door key, we get into the house, come up here, and it is then that we break through that fanlight. Come, let's go back the way we came. And not a word of this to anyone, not even Jimmy Richardson.
I was completely baffled by the rest of that day. When I saw Holmes, he was either hurrying in or out of our rooms at Baker Street. He seemed tireless. But I knew him well enough to recognize that he'd formed a theory and was working upon it. That evening, at about 9 o'clock, we once again took a cab and made our way to Spring Grove.
The house we're about to burgle is owned by Mr. Harold Kestrel, Watson. He works as head of the Essex Arsenal. Now, does that not mean something to you?
I suppose well, frankly, no.
The Essex Arsenal supplies government arms of various types on contract to the Defence Ministry. Now, surely there must be a connection with Kestrel and the Bishop's new invention. Yes, now that makes sense. Now, you may have noticed that I've been taking a great interest in the agony column of the newspapers. Do you remember one insertion? It read in the morning paper, "All is well with higher clergy, Seabird." Now, surely that can easily read, "All is well with Bishop Kestrel."
Joe Holmes, that's clever.
Thank you. And there was a reply to that insertion. It read, "Seabird, take care of clergy. Money ready. 2 J's.
But you think a ransom is about to be paid?
No, I don't. Now, let me read you tonight's message. It is, "Clergy dangerously ill. Call 10 tonight. Knock 3 times with money and instructions. Seabird."
Oh, heavens, you think you're about to kill the man?
No, Watson. It's a trap. A trap I laid by myself. You see, I placed that insertion. If I'm right, we shall clear the whole matter up in just 1 hour. Here is St. Margaret's Avenue. Good. It won't be long now, Watson.
The entry into Bishop's lodgings and the quiet scramble across the rooftops in the evening light were far easier than I anticipated. Holmes had left nothing to chance. We had ropes and lanterns and rubber-soled shoes. It was only a matter of minutes before we found ourselves on the rooftop of the house owned by the man Kestrel. Holmes reached into his pocket and produced a gun.
There. Now, you see, Watson, there's a light on. Being a fan light, there can be no curtain. Careful now, let me go first. Yes, I can see. Yes, we're right. There's a man lying on the bed. He seems asleep. And another sitting in a chair beside him. Well?
How the devil do we get down there?
There's only one way, Watson. I'm going to simply jump through the glass. Follow me as quickly as you can. I'll deal with the tug on guard. You attend to the man on the bed, who must be Bishop. Ready? Here I go. All right. Stanley, have your hands over your head.
Who are you? Now, what's this all about?
Not to sound, or you're a dead man. Watson.
It's all right, Holmes.
I'm with you.
Tend to Bishop.
Very well. But this man's drugged, Holmes. He's still alive. But I can't wake him.
Don't try. Wait. Listen.
What's happening in here? Well, what's the matter?
Stay quite still, Kestrel, and you won't be hurt. The game is up. The police are surrounding the house. We are taking Giles Bishop out of here, and you are going to face arrest for kidnapping and assault. Come on.
After that, events happened at a remarkable speed. The man named Kestrel must have realized that he could not escape. He refused to make a statement, wisely waiting for his lawyer to advise him. Holmes left me to take care of Bishop, and at gunpoint forced Kestrel and the man called Woods downstairs. They didn't have long to wait before...
Open it, Kestrel, and don't make a fuss.
Very well. Kestrel, what is it? What's wrong with Bishop? Why?
We've caught the big fish at last. Come in, James Jules. Mycroft, bring the police in. The case is over.
Well done, Sherlock. This way, man. This way. This way.
Be careful. Back at our rooms, Holmes was able to add the final detail.
It was all arranged by James Jules. The 2 J's of the advertisements. He was in need of money. He arranged a deal with Kestrel of the Essex Arsenal. He would renew the standing contracts for a certain sum. But then Bishop came up with this new invention, which, if the Defense Ministry were impressed by the demonstration, would alter all their contracts for arms. Bishop simply had to be kept out of the way until the business deals went through. Luckily, we were able to foil the kidnappers. The demonstration will take place as planned. And who knows, it could revolutionize the whole of this country's defenses. Let's hope so.
Listen again next Sunday to The Stories of Sherlock Holmes, with Graham Armitage as Holmes and Kerry Jordan as Dr. Watson.
Oh, splendid. There's
nice fire going here in the morning room. And Roger's arranged all your letters on the desk. Let's have the morning quietly by ourselves, shall we, Felix?
Oh, anything you say, my dear. It has turned cold, hasn't it? Yes, I'm content to stay at home, do my correspondence.
I have letters to write also.
What's this? It's odd. Writing seems familiar. And a foreign stamp, of course it does. Dear Droops, this will come as a shock to her job. I can't believe it. It's signed Brawny.
What is it, dear? You've gone quite pale. Are you ill?
Well, this letter, it claims to be from my older brother Matthew, but he died. He died many years ago.
We present the stories of Sherlock Holmes.
The eldest son. Looking back over the years and the hundreds of cases I've chronicled about Sherlock Holmes, I recall one of the most interesting to be the Chancery action brought by Matthew Inglethorpe for the recovery of his lawful inheritance. It was about the turn of the century that Sir Rufus Inglethorpe died. He had lived for many years on his own at a vast country estate known as the Elms, near Canterbury. After his death, his younger son Felix and his wife Jennifer took over the house. For a while, all was peaceful. And then a ripple of rumor began to run through London society. The newspapers and social publications hinted that all was not well at the Elms. I think it was at that point that Holmes started taking an interest.
What do you know of the Inglethorpe family, Watson?
Well, little or nothing, Holmes. It's a name that is being continually bandied about in society, but as I take little interest in such affairs, I confess I'm, well, more or less ignorant. Well, why should I be interested?
Well, because the family appears to have the seeds of destruction planted within itself. I've noticed that it occurs regularly in history and continues right until the present day. Now, let me see. I have several old scrapbooks here that would prove invaluable upon family references. Now, let me see. Yes, I think this might tell me. Yes, here we are. There was an Admiral Inglethorpe who greatly distinguished himself in the wars against the Dutch. And, of course, Sir Rufus, who died recently, was a famous army man. Yes, it was well known that he had an ungovernable temper. He ruled the family with a rod of iron. And inevitably, the eldest son, Matthew, kicked against this imposed discipline once he became of age. There was an enormous row, and Matthew left the estate never to return. For a while, he wrote secretly to his mother, but she soon became ill and died. Matthew is thought to have died in Africa.
And, I seem to have heard those sort of stories so many times in connection with wealthy families.
I agree. Also, it seems that the daughter, Phoebe, caused a sensation by marrying an actor named Clarence Howard. As might have been expected, Sir Rufus lost his famous temper, and she also left the Elms. Yes, they also travelled abroad, America mostly.
And who was left?
Well, just the other son, Felix, who left only to marry a wealthy society beauty, Jennifer Trent. It's they who are the present owners of the Elms.
Well, this may be of interest to some people, but I'm surprised that you find it so, Holmes. After all, the domestic squabble of the Inglethorpe family is a family matter. There's nothing criminal going on, surely.
Not at the moment, but there could be. You see, Felix Inglethorpe used to be a member of the Diogenes Club. He's recently resigned, and my brother Mycroft attributes it to yet another family scandal. We appear to have a visitor. Now, this could be most interesting. You see, Mycroft was mentioning my name only recently to Jennifer Inglethorpe, who was distressed at her husband not using the club. Now, I wonder.
A lady to see you, Mr. Holmes. Says she's sorry she doesn't have an appointment. But here's her card, and she's waiting below. She's very nice. Proper lady, beautifully dressed.
Oh, thank you. Yes. Show the lady up, Mrs. Hudson.
Very good, sir.
Well, I'd better put the scrapbook away, Watson. It makes it look a little too obvious. The lady is indeed Mrs. Jennifer Inglethorpe.
And it is a coincidence, Holmes.
No, not really. She must have seen the papers and realized things were coming to a head.
Mrs. Inglethorpe.
Good day to you, madam. Pray do come in. It's a very cold day, but we have a good fire.
Thank you. But...
Allow me to introduce you. This is my friend and colleague, Dr. Watson. You may feel free to speak to him as you would to me.
This is a most delicate matter.
Well, I'll leave you if you wish, madam.
No. Your brother Mycroft has told me much about you, Mr. Holmes. And you too, Doctor. May I remove my cape?
Please, allow me.
Thank you.
Now, do sit down near the fire.
I shall be most comfortable here, thank you. I hardly know where to begin.
It is regarding your husband and the fact that there is a claimant to the Elms estates. His elder brother Matthew, who was thought to have been dead these 20 years, has now returned to this country, and as the eldest son of the family, maintains that the Elms is his. Is that not so?
Mr. Holmes, I cannot think how you know this. We have done our best to suppress these facts.
But some news has leaked to the daily press, and speculation is now rife. I do sympathize, Mrs. Inglethorpe, but I hardly see how I can help.
I'm so confused, Mr. Holmes. I thought if I could present all the facts to you, you might be able to make me see the whole affair in a more reasonable light, and then I might be of more support to my husband in his dilemma.
Very well. I'm willing to listen to whatever trouble you find yourself in.
Well, it is much as you suggest. Matthew, Felix's brother, has returned after over 20 years. He approached the solicitors, Coins and Blanco, and they have drawn up a sworn affidavit regarding the whole of his activities. He says his life is an open book, and anyone is willing to question him on any matter. My husband agreed to meet him privately, and, well, he is inclined to believe that this stranger from the grave is his own brother.
I see.
But we cannot just accept his testimony at face value. We are therefore prepared to wait. If the matter reaches court, it will create a sensational scandal. Phoebe, that is Felix's sister, who has returned to this country, now that both her father and her husband are dead, she refuses to believe that this man is her elder brother. Phoebe and Felix have never got along at all well. But this matter has thrown them together again.
I see.
Felix invited her down to the Elms, and the arguments have never stopped. Things came to a head a few nights ago. We had sought legal advice, of course, but a frank discussion brought many facts out into the open. Felix, as always, was kindness itself, but Phoebe was adamant. She impressed upon Wilfred Simmons, our family solicitor, that she would never accept this impostor.
I tell you, Mr. Simmons, that Matthew is dead. I know he is dead. This man is an impostor. We've only to take him to court and trick him once or twice, and we can break him.
But Phoebe, the letter, the handwriting. Well, we have nothing to compare it with, but the fact that he called me Droops. No one else ever called me that. Well, I mean, since we were children, except Matthew. And I always refer to him as Brawn. You know that, but how could an impostor have found that out?
I don't know, but he has somehow. Look, if Matthew had been alive in recent years, do you think we wouldn't have heard from him? Of course we would. He would have been sponging upon us, writing begging letters.
Oh, come. He may have become rich, successful, made good. After all, your own husband, Clarence...
Matthew would never have become successful. Clarence might have started off as an actor, but he ended as a theatre impresario, a name to be reckoned with in America. And he did it purely by hard work. Matthew was a drifter. He put down no roots and never worked unless he could help it. He was penniless when he died in Africa.
Phoebe, you can't say that. You don't know it. You're guessing. And Mr. Simmons is right. I've never received a begging letter from Matthew in my life.
Well, I have.
What?
You have?
Yes, many times. Though I suppose he must have reasoned that because I left the fold, that I would be more sympathetic than you. I've received about 5, all told, over the years.
But why didn't you ever tell us?
My dear brother, we've hardly been on speaking terms during the last 20 years, have we?
Can you produce any of these letters so we could compare the handwriting and then...
No, of course I can't produce them. I didn't keep them. At least I don't remember doing so. I'll go through my things, but it's very doubtful.
Did you ever reply to the letters?
Once or twice. I was even stupid enough to take pity on him once. Many years ago, we were in America. He was there, too, drifting about the San Francisco docks on his way to Africa. I sent him money. He never acknowledged it. Then I had another begging letter from Africa. It was just before Khartoum.
He must have died out there about the time General Gordon was killed. Since then, I haven't heard a thing.
But, Phoebe, this doesn't prove a thing. I mean...
No, wait a minute. This may help. If we confront this man and ask him casually if he ever wrote to his sister, and if so, when and where, it will place him in an extraordinarily difficult position. He'll be forced to give us facts and figures. If you can only find one of those letters, Phoebe, then I think we shall have the proof that we need.
I shall look. As I say, I hold out very little hope. But please, don't let us give him the chance to do even greater research into Matthew's past. I beg you, leave it until he tries to take the whole matter to court. Let us keep all this up our sleeves.
I'd sooner settle it out of court without a scandal.
Do you want to give away the family fortune, the home? Just hand it over to this man without fighting him? I always thought you were spiteful.
Oh, no, please.
Phoebe, you haven't seen him. I'm sure it is Matthew. He looks like Matthew, speaks like him.
You can remember how he looks and speaks after 25 years? You were a youngster when you last saw him. You can't believe it's Matthew. And I won't let you hand everything over to him.
Now, please. Let's keep all this to ourselves, at least for the next few days. Just let us wait and leave the next move to him. Now, what do you say? You agree?
And that is where we are at the moment, Mr. Holmes. I came to ask your opinion. What do you think we should do? Fight the matter in court or not? What do you say?
Jennifer Inglethorpe leaned forward in her chair and looked eagerly at Sherlock Holmes. He'd been listening intently to his story, his dressing gown wrapped around his tall frame, his head sunk upon his chest as he gazed into the fire. He placed the tips of his fingers together and then said,
I advise you to remain quiet. Your sister-in-law is correct in one respect. In a position like this, the guilty parties will eventually give themselves away. But I think in this case quite a lot of rope will have to be played out before the culprits hang themselves.
I was surprised that Holmes phrased his reply in the plural, but Mrs. Inglethorpe seemed quite satisfied. She rose to her feet.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes. But will you promise me one thing? If at any time you can take an active part in the conclusion of this affair, you will do so regardless of our personal feelings.
I will give you that promise, yes. Good day to you, Mrs. Inglethorpe.
After that, some weeks passed before a court action was publicly announced. It immediately hit the headlines. There was general sympathy for the claimant. It was a romantic story. The return of the repentant prodigal son, penniless, to take what was rightfully his. It lasted for days. Some witnesses swore Matthew Inglethorpe was genuine, others that he wasn't. Of course, the cross-questioning of the man himself was the highlight. Sir Arthur Wolseley, for the defence, subjected him to hours of interrogation and threw some very awkward questions at him.
Now, tell me, we have heard of your travels throughout the world, how you dropped the name Matthew Inglethorpe for the less conspicuous name Ian Thorpe. During this time, did you ever attempt to communicate with your family at the Elms?
No.
You didn't write any letters to your father, brother, or sister?
I didn't write to my father or my brother at the Elms. I did, however, write to my sister Phoebe.
Can you remember how many letters you wrote and the times and places from which you wrote them?
I wrote 5 letters in all. I can't remember the exact dates. I know the last one was from Africa. The time before that, I was in San Francisco, and Phoebe was kind enough to send me money for my passage to Africa. I arrived there in 1881, just after the defeat at Majuba. I wrote again some 4 years later, at the beginning of 1885, when General Gordon was slain. That was the last time I tried to communicate with her.
Well, Watson, he's got round that one perfectly. If he can only prove his handwriting, he's in a very strong position. Yes, I think they're going to bring his sister for the defence.
Phoebe Howard was calm, but I suspected very angry as she stepped forward to give her evidence. She denied any resemblance of the claimant to her brother, refusing to see any likeness. As to the letters, she spoke with total conviction.
The handwriting on the letter my brother Felix received, calling him by those nicknames, and the handwriting on the letters I received, is, to the best of my knowledge, completely different.
It is a pity that you did not keep those letters.
I would have done, had I known this would come about. But who keeps begging letters for 5 years? Naturally, I destroyed them all.
Naturally. But what makes you so sure that the claimant is not your long-lost brother? What about his evidence, his knowledge?
He could have found out all he's told us from a long association with Matthew. In one of his letters, Matthew mentioned a bosom friend who travelled with him. They were in Africa together. I believe that bosom friend to be here, sitting in this court, impersonating Matthew.
In the court?
Please, Your Honor, may I make a statement?
Proceed.
My brother Matthew was the black sheep of the family. I was also treated as an outcast when I married the man I loved. Can't you see that if this man was Matthew, I should be delighted that he now came back to redress so many wrongs? I've no love for the past. I would dearly love to see a change in the old ways. If I truly believed this man was Matthew, I should embrace him with open arms. But as it is, I cannot believe him. I do not know him.
But I know you, and our secret regarding the governess. Yes, Governess Grimsby. We got her fired by placing stolen jewelry in her wardrobe, didn't we? You and me. And no one else knows this, not even Felix. Or have you forgotten that?
I can't.
Great heavens, Holmes.
He has won the day.
For that, it was literally all over, bar the shouting. Judgment was entered for Matthew Inglethorpe, and he was cheered when he left the law courts. There was great admiration also for Felix Inglethorpe when he was seen to shake hands most heartily with his elder brother. Phoebe Howard, however, heavily veiled and muffled in her furs, hastily climbed into a waiting hansom and vanished. The case was over.
So, you think the case is over, do you, Watson?
I beg your pardon, Holmes?
Well, ever since we returned home, you've been wearing a satisfied smile, yet you haven't said a word. The events at the law courts could hardly have been more dramatic, could they? It's caught the public imagination, and everyone is pleased with the result.
Except Phoebe Hart.
Oh, I don't think she'll be too distressed.
What do you mean by that?
Well, simply that in her own words, she was prepared to embrace her real brother with open arms. I predict that it will not be long before she and Matthew are reconciled.
Well, then the case really will be over. And if they'll all learn the lessons of the past, then perhaps this family will not fail again, as you think they're doomed to.
I wish I could feel as confident as you, Watson, but I'm afraid I still think there is a considerable way to go. And until something positive occurs, well, we must just wait and see, mustn't we?
And after that, I was determined to forget the whole affair. I concentrated upon my work. Although word did reach me that Holmes' prediction regarding a family reconciliation had in fact taken place. It seems that once again it was Felix Inglethorpe's generous nature that brought it about.
Come. Surely it is time that we behaved sensibly. The facts have been faced. It is only natural that one should feel a certain animosity, but we must all try to rise above the circumstances. After all, Jennifer and I are the ones who stand to lose most. We are making preparations to leave the Elms. We shall return to town and establish our home there.
You don't have to hurry in any way, Felix. And in fact, I should appreciate it if you could stay on and assist me in running the estates.
No, I could not do that. They are yours to do as you like with.
And what of you, Phoebe?
I shall be all right. No need to worry about me.
But these vast rooms, the running of the house. I'm still unmarried. There's no one here to play hostess. If you would consider returning to the Elms after all these years, I am more than willing to adjust to your taking your share.
That is very generous of you, Matthew. But surely, after all that has happened, after all I have said about you, blackened your name.
Will you consider joining me back at the old home and trying to make a future happy for both of us? Will you, Phoebe?
It was shortly after Phoebe returned to the Elms that Sherlock Holmes made a rather unusual request. He'd been to see Jennifer Inglethorpe and her husband Felix, and had somehow contrived to get us all invited down to the Elms one Sunday. I confess I could see no reason for this, but curiosity made me accept the invitation. It was clear from the onset that Matthew and his sister Phoebe were slightly put out by our visit. Felix introduced us.
And immediately, Holmes dominated the proceeding.
I'm extremely sorry if this seems to be an intrusion in any way, but really, Mrs. Inglethorpe, you've only yourself to blame.
Me? I don't understand.
When you came to see me at my rooms in Baker Street, you made a request, and that was that if ever I saw fit to take an active part in the family drama, I should do so regardless of anyone's feelings, remember?
Yes. Yes, of course. But I don't understand.
No, but you will. Now, Mrs. Howard, it is with you that I shall start.
By all means, Mr. Holmes. What exactly is it that you want?
The truth, from your own lips. You see, it's one thing to cause emotional scenes with clever stories, but quite another to prevent those lies being verified. I have a good many friends in the United States. It did not take me long to confirm or deny the facts.
I don't know what you mean.
Your marriage, your husband's so-called success story, and his apparent death. Of course you married the actor Clarence Howard, and you did travel extensively with him, but he was out of work most of the time, wasn't he?
What are you talking about?
You ended up in cheap lodgings in Boston. Then you and he disappeared from the scene. There is no record of his death or burial in the United States, and no one has ever heard of him in the world of the theatrical impresarios where he's supposed to have made his name.
Now, look here, Holmes. What are you insinuating? Are you trying to say
I am saying that Clarence Howard didn't die. He remained very much alive. But Matthew Inglethorpe, the real Matthew Inglethorpe, did die out in Africa under the name of Ian Thorpe. Records can be checked there, you see.
Then this man is an impostor.
Of course he is an impostor. He is Clarence Howard.
Clarence?
Of course.
Holmes, I beg of you.
How else could someone give such a convincing performance? Retain all the facts and details of family life, unless he was a trained actor able to sustain a characterization.
And all the information he gave us was
drummed into him by Phoebe, his own wife. She alone knew the secrets of the family and groomed him to perfection in the part. And then, very cleverly, she took the role of being his arch enemy, trying to trick him. It was a performance almost as good as his.
This is unbelievable.
Of course, he won the claim. Against all odds, he had proved himself. Everyone was taken in. In time, a reconciliation with Phoebe, and then, of course, they could take over the elms and the estates while you bowed out quietly. How long they would have been able to sustain the roles of brother and sister is a matter of speculation. Well, what course of action you take is up to you. I should guess that the next court case will be even more of a sensation than the first one. Don't you agree?
Holmes and I returned to Baker Street immediately, and I cannot imagine the scenes that must have taken place back at the Elms. Once again, I was at a loss to know how Sherlock Holmes had arrived at the truth.
Every little detail was so overwhelmingly glib. His evidence, I mean. He remembered everything. The man knew far too much at just the right time. And the one member of the family who was never mentioned was Clarence Howard. It was worth checking up on. Facts. That's what detection is made of, Watson. Lies can never replace facts. Oh, she was very clever, but just a little too clever, don't you think?
Listen again next Sunday to The Stories of Sherlock Holmes, with Graham Armitage as Holmes and Kerry Jordan as Dr. Watson.